Welcome to The Dope, an online business magazine committed to the cause of sustainability in the travel industry. This is Shoba Mohan from Rare India, talking about this cause of sustainability, responsible travel, and now regenerative tourism is something very close to my heart. And along with Dope, we strive to make a difference on why and how people will travel. And both as an industry and how we can all be and bring about this change. Welcome to the show, and today we have with us Yeshwant Rao Holkar. He's the partner at Ahilya Experiences. They are the flagship company that have two amazing luxury and heritage experiences, the Ahilya Fort Maheshwar, Madhya Pradesh, and also Ahilya by the Sea in Goa. Two fantastic hospitality experiences that have been, in fact, Ahilya Fort has been one of the foremost authentic heritage experiences from Central India, from Madhya Pradesh, to have entered the hospitality scene. And to speak more about it, we have Yeshwant Rao Holkar with us. Hi Yeshwant, welcome on the show. Very pleased to have you here. And we all know about Ahilya Fort in Maheshwar, Madhya Pradesh, and the way Ahilya Fort has been repurposed into a fantastic hospitality luxury, stay. Luxury hotel, luxury boutique hotel is a fantastic story for the cause of responsible tourism. And today we will be delving into that. And Yeshwant has several ideas, having spoken to him before. I find it very intriguing that their second generation takes on the mantle and to continue the tradition. Yeshwant, we'll dive right in, and as we spoke earlier, it is quite a bit of a challenge in preserving heritage in India. Number one, that there is so much of heritage, that we have around us that we don't know what is important and what we should be preserving. Secondly, also that as a personal prerogative to be preserving heritage, I know it is quite a challenge because we don't have too much help from the government agencies. How has the journey for Ahilya Fort been?
It's an excellent question, Shoba. And, first I'd just like to thank you for having us on this platform to share our story and our journey. You're right, this topic of heritage and responsible tourism, socially conscious tourism, is more important now than ever. So having a platform like this is really a great opportunity. My father started our journey on restoration and adaptive use of an old structure for the purpose of tourism 20 years ago now. And it was, in those days, these terms of adaptive reuse and whatnot weren't really part of the common terminology as much as they're known today. And Dad started restoring Ahilya Bai's Wada and the Ahilya Fort mostly out of a concept of let us be true and authentic to what this structure was architecturally, while introducing our own aesthetic and our own, let's say, modern comforts of that would be required at a heritage hotel. That journey 20 years ago and the journey we continue to walk today are very different. And they're different primarily, I feel, because Maheshwar, the town in which Ahilya Fort is located, even 20 years ago, was quite a sleepy little town, and was very rooted in its history and heritage. today, these concepts of modernity, concepts of development, government schemes of development, smart cities, all of these sort of things, which if channeled in the right way, have huge potential and are very required, if not guided from the grassroots level and from the highest levels to take heritage conservation into mind and keep it center focus, can quickly, as you can imagine, take us away from really what the opportunity could be. So I think the challenges we face, to come to your question specifically, the challenges we face today are about sensitization at all levels, and development at the state level, at the central level in India, has so many different departments, ministries involved. So coordination, sensitization, not only from top to bottom, but across different ministries and departments is critical, where you have, for example, at the very local level, people feel like, well, we must have this fancy, shiny new thing, and that is going to be wonderful for Maheshwar. And it could be. But if it was done in a slightly different way, so that it is sensitive to the heritage and the aesthetic around it, not only would it achieve, a specific example would be, we have a brand new I Love Maheshwar selfie spot, in Maheshwar now, which is everywhere. Everywhere now wants a selfie spot, and they're great. They're fun, they're engaging, they're a wonderful way for tourists to also share where they've been. But now where that selfie spot is placed, if it is placed in front of a 17th, 18th century fort wall that, which has beautiful intricate carvings and has a particular heritage look, all of a sudden it's completely changed the nature of that place. Now, why not have that same selfie spot in a beautiful place that is not of historic value, So these sorts of challenges of working with local stakeholders, working with the local administration, to help them understand that we have a unique opportunity, given our nation's, our country's beautiful heritage, to achieve a level of development and progress and even economic progress,
yes,
rooted in our heritage, respectful of our heritage, that doesn't have to mimic the West, that doesn't have to go, shiny, tech-enabled in everything we do, in a way that smothers our heritage, So that's the primary challenge we face today.
One of the things that you touched upon, and which I find very intriguing, is that while you can concentrate on repurposing and retaining the essence of the fort, it can become quite incongruous if the surroundings kind of start to look, like a 24th century building blocks, right? So how do you go about that? I mean, Maheshwar, I understand, is a small, and I'm sure as people who've led that that area as the dynasty, you must be having some amount of influence on the people. Are you able to engage and encourage people to keep dipping back into their traditional architecture?
I think while there is a sense of, we feel a sense of custodianship, right?
Yes.
It is very much a dialogue that there's no diktat that anybody, the government, people who have been there for hundreds of years, anybody can issue these days, It is not that one can say one has to do it this way. It doesn't work that way, and it shouldn't.
No,
the only way it works is if you get the real stakeholders to understand the value of it. That if Maheshwar, which today still has beautiful old buildings, all of those buildings in the village, all of those buildings in the bazaar are torn down and put up these cemented blocks, which you see everywhere. Who will come? What is special about the place anymore? And the economy is so closely linked to tourism now, not only in its living heritage of handloom weaving, but also in, so many of the families have put up a little hotel. So one has to, bring other examples of how this has worked around the country, around the world, and work at all levels constantly. You feel a little bit like you're that annoying uncle who is just trying to, hammer in the same point time and time again over decades. But slowly and surely we are seeing it happen, and we even see it happen, in some of these new buildings that are coming up, where there was a 2-story beautiful old structure. There's now a 5-story cement building, but the person has gone to the extent of getting some replica, happen to be Rajasthani windows in the Nimar, to get some windows installed that have a certain aesthetic. So at least there's a shift, that it doesn't have to be this, reflective glass box. Yeah.
So I mean, some kind of aesthetics are, some kind of inspired aesthetic kind of. And do you think Ahilya Fort per se leads into that? Has been able to inspire people around? Because one of the things that we do when we do in central India, these vernacular homes, the vernacular architecture, one of the things that hotels really try and do is to encourage the local people to be proud of their local architecture, right?
Yeah.
And, like you said, it is unfair, but some kind of inspiration, does that work?
I think the Ahilya Fort is such a separate structure, history, heritage. It's sort of the castle on the hill,
Okay.
And in a way, yes, people have seen that, tourists from all over the world, experts from all over the world have come and recognized what my father did there as an example of adaptive reuse, of preservative, restoration. But what I feel is really required is, and there are certain pockets around, as you said, vernacular homestays. There are certain pockets around India where now you have a homestay, service that is provided, which in what used to be the average home in the village, people are coming, and when you see an outsider to a certain extent come and appreciate what you thought was just every day,
yes,
you have a shift in perspective, and you say, gosh, this old ceiling, which perhaps leaks every now and then, but it's using 200-year-old timber, and it has its own charm and whatnot. You start seeing that charm, and you start seeing the economic incentive in maintaining that particular structure.
Where especially where Ahilya Fort is concerned, the initiative for Richard, Mr. Richard Holkar, your father, was probably to preserve his legacy, wouldn't it? Isn't that where it would have started from? To say, okay, this is, this belongs to, it's a legacy that belongs to my ancestors, and this preserving it is probably a call of duty, for instance. And then there would have been, are there several other ideas for preservation? What else could it be if it was not a hotel, for instance?
No, a great question. I think, and obviously I speak for my father here, but his original intent in this was preserving a legacy in not only the built structure, but the living heritage. Ahilya Fort and Maheshwar was the capital of the Holkar state in the mid to late 1700s, and it was the capital of a very revered ancestor of ours, Devi Ahilya Holkar, and her legacy as an inclusive leader, as a peaceful leader, as someone who was extremely devout and pious, but also inclusive of other cultures, religions, castes, as someone who felt that the rising tide surely lifted all boats and achieved that. That is a legacy which is, I think timeless, must be adopted everywhere. And that was something that when Dad came back to Maheshwar and saw how that had woven itself into the culture of the village, where Hindu and Muslim worked side by side. There was no, communal agitation, nothing, For despite all of our, the ups and downs that we have faced as a country on that front, he said, this is something amazing. And let us work towards moving, keeping that alive, keeping the deep spirituality of Maheshwar alive, which is done through, the hotel actively supports, sponsors, and invites the world to experience some of the traditions that have continued on for 200 years in Maheshwar, started by Ahilya Bai. My father and mother started the revival of the local handloom craft, which was also an integral part of the fabric of that society in many ways. Keeping, a Hindu and a Muslim working side by side, that was never the stated objective, but it was the achieved objective. The achieved result, rather. To keep the fabric of that society were woven together, literally. And now we have embarked on the restoration of the built heritage of Ahilya Bai as well, working on the restoration and conservation plan of some of the more important structures in Maheshwar, the Ahilyeshwar Chhatri, Vithalji Rao's Chhatri, the Ghats. Those structures also stand as testament to who she was, to what she achieved as a leader and as a promoter of her people. So these are things that definitely we very much keep central to everything we do, from a tourism perspective, from our family, from even what we try to communicate to the world, how important those things are.
Yeah, and also the engagement of the community. So that all of this
Absolutely
continues to stay in context, which is very important where heritage is concerned. So, you have taken us through a lot of the restoration story, but as you took over from your father, obviously, again, 20 years ago, I entered the tourism business 25 years ago, and what hospitality looks like today is very different from what it was then, and how it is spoken about today. The whole heritage, the whole sense of heritage and a heritage stay and the royal living, the way it is talked about today is very different from what we used to talk about even, like, say, 10, 15 years ago in the early 2000s. What are the immediate changes, maybe not structural changes, in terms of narratives, the change in narratives that you have seen happening as you took over?
No, absolutely. But one thing, I have only come to this story in the last, let's say, 5-6 years.
Yeah.
I still only work on very few elements of it and help my father in what he does.
But actually, Yeshwant, the narrative has been reinforced. This whole storytelling bit has come in only in the last, kind of gained momentum in only in the last 4-5 years. Literally right in front of us. Because they were not, first of all, there were not so many places. When you said Ahilya Fort, or you said that fort in Maheshwar, people knew who we were talking about. Otherwise, it was Richard's place. especially in your marketing. That's all of that is changing quite a bit now. So that is why I was asking.
I understand. I think my father's approach has always been do the work and it will speak for itself.
Yes.
Because he's done the work and done such brilliant work, I've come in to try and tell the story a little bit more. Part of, especially in this world where media is so pervasive, there's so much clutter and noise and whatnot. If you don't tell that story, if that narrative doesn't have a little bit of wind in its sails, it flags, and part of it is to help, and I feel not only, what we do in Maheshwar to help Maheshwar, but to also tell that story so that, in whatever small way we can, more of the heritage of the country sees an example like the Ahilya Fort, where 20 years after starting a boutique hotel there, it has grown to become not only a flag bearer for adaptive reuse and conservation and restoration, but a successful business, So I think that is a story that must go out there, and many people are telling it. So many people have done wonderful work in that way. If we can add our voice so that other people also see that this is possible, and those stakeholders at all levels see that this is possible, it can only help all of us,
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think your question was, how do we new initiatives in this?
Yes.
Right? One is definitely around the communication side of things, I think engaging, the communication has been very outward focused, that, let us tell India, let us tell the world about Maheshwar, about the restoration, about what is happening here. Come to Maheshwar, see it. Our next big challenge is to turn inward and engage more and more with our local community, our local stakeholders, schools, people within 20 kilometers, of Maheshwar, to come, to understand, to see. That is a project that I am personally very excited about, that we are starting in the next years. And what shape does that take? That takes the shape of, guided tours with, we have now an in-house conservation architect full-time with us, who we must, we must engage the local community. So many of the tourists who come to Maheshwar or have started coming to Maheshwar again as we open up, to understand, guided tours of what's happening here. Why is this important? What techniques were used here? Why it's important that you don't scribble, Sanjay loves Priyanka everywhere, which is the biggest problem in conservation in India today. Sanjay and Priyanka, we've got to convince them that there are better places to write your names. That is something that we're very excited about. And then, we are blessed to have these beautiful structures. How can we, while the adaptive reuse of the Ahilya Fort and Ahilya Bai's Wada has happened, how can we look at other spaces that not only, that have sort of lied, not neglected, but unused?
Yes.
How can we look at other spaces in a way that brings life back into them, in a way that, the public can engage with, learn something, have a little cafe, bring more activity, business to the local economy. Those are sort of projects that we're
at the same time, at the same time, keep the built heritage alive.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
So, on this, it's very intriguing for me that Ahilya is one structure, right? The fort is one structure, right? But around it, you said there are lots of places, which is again, slowly you will probably, you're working on the temple, right? So that's one project you're very very passionately involved with. But as you drive, I mean, we were talking about driving from Mumbai or driving from Indore or maybe Bhopal. I'm sure while the dynasty existed, there might be several other smaller, smaller instances, smaller examples of architecture, of places and things like that. How do we keep those things going? That is where the Sanjay versus Priyanka is very, very high, because they're not under the vision of tourism. There is nobody looking at it. If ASI takes it on, all right, most times they're not, and it's quite sad to see that you're driving and a beautiful little chhatri or a beautiful little dome is just kind of, falling apart.
Yeah. No, there's so much work to be done, Shoba, especially within, even our family's built legacy. There are so many structures. Ahilya Bai was one of the great builders of India. She, sitting in her capital in Maheshwar, before the days of even telegrams, forget WhatsApp and email and all of that. Sitting in her capital in Maheshwar, she orchestrated, administrated, and funded the Varanasi to, it's just mind-boggling what she was able to do. And, to a certain extent, we're limited in resources, in bandwidth, in just energy also, As you said in the beginning of this conversation, every restoration is a struggle on many fronts. There's encroachment, there's local ideas that think they want to do something different and go in a different way. So it's a bit of a struggle. So we have taken an approach of trying to go deep and create an example of a really well done place, right, in Maheshwar. But there's a wonderful vada in Chandwad, which actually the government came in and restored to a beautiful. It's on the road between Bombay to Maheshwar. You pass through Chandwad on the Bombay-Agra highway. Incredible restoration job that they had done in that vada. And it's a lovely place. It needs, life. It needs activity. It needs more visitors. It needs people to come and see it. Indore, there's a lot. Actually, to be fair, the Smart Cities program in Indore has done wonderful work to restore the Holkar Chhatris, provided a lot of funding, and now the old city palace has gone under a major restoration as well there. That's quite an interesting thing to see. Outside of Maheshwar, about 45 minutes up into the Ghats, which was the original passageway where trade and the military passageway was the Jam Darwaza. It's up on the rise of the Ghat. Beautiful old Darwaza there with stunning views. That is something where, with a little bit of concerted effort and focus, one can do something. I think stepwells are an incredible thing to restore, not only from a heritage perspective, but from a water conservation and management perspective. The ancient wisdom of these stepwells in refiltering water down into the aquifers is something that's so needed right now, and they're already there. They were just, many of them
needs cleaning up.
Yeah, they need cleaning up, and some of them, sadly, I think were during the British times filled in, and the British didn't really look at these stepwells. They looked at them as spaces for disease and malaria and all, plug them up. So we can, there's a lot to be done there as well.
Okay, a lot to be done there. So quickly about two challenges. One is, of course, funding, because as we started out talking, a lot of these, especially the ones that are into hospitality, as independent hospitality projects, are personally funded, right? So funding is always a big challenge. The second thing about this thing is, as you maintain it, as you continue to maintain it, isn't it a challenge to find the karigars, the people who do that kind of plastering, the people who do, that stone, the stone masonry? I mean, where do you continue to find these people? So again.
Yeah, it's wood carvers, stone carvers, good masons. I mean, you know, I've really become more involved in this space in the last, let's say, 2 years. But interacting with really our mentors and guides and the experts in this field, it's something that they're all just so worried about, because those handful of master stone carvers are just sadly slowly not going to be with us for much longer.
Yeah, and the next generation obviously is not interested in taking it on. Yeah.
I hope that can change. You know, I think it all starts with, as you say, it starts with the funding,
Yeah.
and this is a little bit of hopefully a virtuous cycle. You know, as more people are experiencing heritage, more people see the economic value in addition to the aesthetic and historic value. You know, then you do see, you know, major corporate houses, individuals, people who, you know, work with organizations like we have, like the World Monument Fund, to channel resources, funding, expertise to these projects. And with that, the next generation may have a chance of, you know, instead of going and working in, you know, some building in Lower Parel, you know, you keep that family tradition alive of and be paid for it, because these are artisans.
Yeah. I think that's that in effect effectively brings together the whole responsible tourism, sustainability, and regenerative ideal behind a heritage project. Now,
Yeah.
the other thing I got, and this is again a very fundamental to me where heritage tourism is concerned, especially to the areas like Maheshwar, which literally it went onto the tourist map of India, literally as a destination hotel. There is, when you talk about Maheshwar, you can't think about anyone else. Now, also what heritage tourism to Maheshwar did was it also highlighted several other cultural perspectives, like the festival on the river, for instance. You know, the Reva society, the fabric, the traditional Maheshwar fabric. So, heritage. I mean, if you take Ahilya Fort as the center, you know, everything that came around it. I mean, cuisines, cultural tradition. I mean, textile traditions, some craft traditions, probably. All of this, again, they literally sustain themselves in and around one singular project. And look at the way it radiates out.
Yeah, no, absolutely, you're right. And that is such an important part of any conservation and conservation tourism, that really, you know, what my parents started out doing as kind of independent initiatives, Rewa Society, Women Weave, and the Handloom School. When my father started the hotel, we have also a school for the children of the weavers called the Ahilya School. You know, and now we're kind of working on a regional cuisine festival. So these are independent elements which sort of were areas that my parents felt quite passionate about, that were part of the local fabric of that society, which now, you know, with a sort of cohesive approach of bringing them together as a holistic experience for people to come and partake in, it's really given a sort of cohesive life to the whole space, and that's something, you know, where one of the elements that we are now increasingly working on is the cultural heritage in terms of even the performative arts in that area, you know. So in February we have the Sacred River Festival every year. Inshallah, with COVID, by that time, who knows where we'll be, but we hope to have it this year as well, where, you know, we have brought together many of the up-and-coming artists and performers from the Indian classical arts to Maheshwar from many different gharanas. But recently we also invited a wonderful Qawwali singer from across the small village across the town, across the river, sorry. And she, the village across the river is really, going back in time. It is very much a rural Indian village. And Maheshwar has become a town to a certain extent, right? But Navratri is something that really still is steeped in that village lifestyle, and the baithaks that happen there, that were still part of the fabric of life. We wanted to bring in to a festival and introduce people to what is happening on a daily basis. We have even the local bhajan mandali, which is a group of, it's not fair to call them amateur musicians. They are musicians from the heart. They're not trained. They're not, I would say, in that way. But they would come together every week to sing in the Ahliyeshwar Chhatri devotional songs and bhajans. And we bring them into the experience that people have at the Ahilya Fort as well. Because that is, there's so much to be said about what one sees in grand circumstances and major concerts and professionally trained musicians. But there's so much of that culture that happens at the village level, at the grassroots level, which is part of life, rather than a performance one goes to the NCPA and sees. This is something that needs a platform, that needs sustenance as well.
Sustenance, yeah. So
that's an important thing that we try to highlight. Yeah,
absolutely. Which is authentic and which is living heritage, right? So that's really wonderful. Yeshwant, would you like to? It's World Tourism Day in a couple of days. It's on the 27th of September is World Tourism Day. And would you like to highlight something about the heritage which both travelers across in India and from the world over should be cognizant about when they're talking about heritage?
I think, at least from our small perspective, heritage is something that is alive. I feel a lot of the times that people look at heritage as this dead thing that you see it's the past, right? And you see it in museums, and you go into these, old places with old forts. Heritage is something that is alive and must continue to be part of the fabric of life in big cities, in small villages, in Timbuktu to Pondicherry, everywhere. And a key part of that, which is, I think, an important message for World Tourism Day, is that heritage is fed by hearts, minds, and wallets of people visiting. Have your beach holiday, explore great cities and fantastic restaurants, and try and make time to expand your mind, expand your cultural knowledge, connect with the heritage of a new place. Because especially in times like this, it needs you. So I think that is a very important message which we from Maheshwar would like to share with everybody in the world.
Thank you so much, Yeshwant. That was really wonderful. And Ahilya Fort, in my opinion, is one of the most authentic heritage experiences. And the beauty of Ahilya Fort is that everything, it radiates the whole essence of what heritage tourism is all about, is to create value. It is supposed to, every heritage is supposed to connect us back to what we are, and a continuity into the future, also to help us create context, right? We haven't arrived here without Ahilya Holkar, right? So, it allows us to create context and substance as heritage buildings, as intangible heritage in crafts and in performing arts. And I think that's very, very special where heritage tourism is concerned, which is why it is so integral that when you're traveling, heritage is one of the things that you would like to explore as a part of your travel itinerary or your travel style. Thank you so much, Yeshwant. It was fabulous talking to you. And for those of you listening in, like I said before, heritage tourism is very, very much a part of what you would be looking at when you talk about traveling responsibly. If there is a heritage place that deserves your attention and your stay, that is what you would choose over any group hotel or any glass and chrome place, because to stay in a heritage hotel, in a repurposed hotel, is to actually touch history in all its contours. Thank you so much, and kindly look at the Dope magazine for more such interesting conversations coming up. Share generously, because in your sharing and your caring is how the whole message of sustainability and regenerative tourism will be taken across continents and to everybody who's a stakeholder in tourism, including the traveler himself. Thank you.
Thank you so much.